The small jobs are real affordable and economical for us to work on because there's almost no mob fees. We can be on and off a job in a day. There's no impacts. So the cost for a small job can stay really low, and yet we can still take on a large project for our scale, large project.
Just to bolster your bottom line?
Yes, I believe it's like eating an elephant. You can eat it one bite at a time. It takes you longer to do it, but your costs involved are less. Granted, at some point you reach a point of efficiency for distance traveled, but as far as 2 to 3 acre job sites, I don't think you can get more efficient than this attachment. It's fast, it's economical, there's the parts are readily available. You can change them, you can change almost any part on it without cranes and big service trucks. The usability is so simple with the one button operation. Anybody can learn it in a matter of 2 or 3 hours. Whereas some of the larger equipment, there's multiple levers, there's multiple functions, there's performance things to look out for, and how it all has to work together. This attachment it really aligns with the KISS theory, keep it simple. And it's efficient, it's durable. I can't go on and on. I can go on and on about all the good things about it. It's really changed the way my business operates. It's changed my bottom line immensely. In the last 4 years, 5 years, I've done things that I would never have expected to do otherwise. We had several miles of bike path that were going to be right down next to the lake. Some of the lake retaining walls are non-structural retaining walls, so the weight, the compression on the wall was a real factor. Not only that, the path was to be 6 feet wide, and the landscaping was completed on both sides, so impact as far as overall had to be minimal. Otherwise, miles and miles of landscaping and irrigation and all kinds of costs of repairing things were just mounting drastically. So I started thinking of a way to transport materials several miles in some cases, and I was going to take Bobcat's dumping hopper and modify the floor with a hydraulic opening so that I could haul 2+ yards, several miles, to put the base rock in on the path. I did several Google searches and finally found the Ashland scraper, and it's changed my world ever since. We originally cut the subgrade to the dirt elevations, and then in a yard, several laydown yards, we've had end dumps, just stockpile rock in there. In some of the videos that I watched online, they showed how the attachment could quarter through an end dump pile, 12 yards, 14 yards of base rock, and it looked easy enough. We just had them start dumping piles of rock, and we started carrying it in from there. We built a temporary school. This was actually when I acquired the unit, was for this job, or when this job started. The overhangs on the school didn't allow for any dump trucks in the site at all. It was kind of a unique project in that the owner didn't want any handicap ramps in the facility at all. She wanted everything as such that it was wheelchair accessible with no long drawn out ramp. So everything, the modulars had to be brought in and set in holes, in pits. And because of the cost, it was decided to grade the whole pad level, put all the modulars in place, and then backfill around all the modulars. The reason we decided to go this route was because the cost per yard to bring the material in with the scrapers was so much cheaper than trying to dig the individual pits for all the modulars to set in. So we graded the whole site level, we brought in all the modulars, set them all up, and then started to backfill all around all the modulars. When we got up to finish height, I believe there was 8 feet from finish concrete sidewalk to the bottom of the eave. So that pretty much limits any dump truck being able to, you could drive a dump truck through there, but you can't dump it. You can drive a small skip loader through there, but your cab misses the awnings by a couple inches. So the skid steer with the Ashland scraper was the way to go. It was efficient. It was fast. You could grade it right on the money. It was prepped for sidewalks and concrete almost instantly when we went through there, and it really proved to be a good investment. It can definitely be considered a niche market, although I think it's more capable to do all kinds of things, just depending on your application and how you can apply it to that. But yes, as far as the niche goes, the stuff that I've done with it has ruled out conventional methods or made them less feasible the conventional way, and it's really opened up a lot of opportunity to me in jobs that I probably normally would have been overlooked. But some of the material that was there was basically compacted, prepped for road base, and it was hard. Some of it was lime treated, and I thought there was no way I could get through it. With brand new cutting edges, it went through it pretty easily. We had one job that I had to put half a mile of bike path, handicap access path through an amusement park, and the ground that was there has been there 15 years. It's been driven on, it's been rained on, it's been compacted over and over and over. And I had to go through and cut a 2-inch section out of that to put 2 inches of asphalt in there, and it cut right through it, no problem. I wore out a full set of cutting edges on it, but it cut through base rock that had been compacted for probably at least 10 years. I don't look at it as how I can get the job done. I look at it more like how can I use the scraper to get it done, because the scraper, it moves so much more material, so much faster. I drive the 613 scraper, and there's a great big wide seat belt in it for a reason. It has to hold you down. You get in the skid steer, and with the roller suspension and the air ride seat, you can travel in 2-speed, high speed, wide open, and it just floats over everything, loaded or not. As you tend to approach the job with more of a, how can I get in and out and keep the speed up? Even if you don't get a full load heaped up, if you cut thin and fast, your cycle times stay higher. At the end of the day, you get a higher productive or more productive day. Traveling slow and loading fast, or traveling fast and loading a little slower, you can keep a smoother grade when you're traveling faster and loading slower. I was approached actually by Tykert Construction, which is a large contractor in the area, after they watched me for, 2 weeks in the school project, the first project that I bought the attachment for. They came in and they had some super low ground pressure settling ponds that they had to build, and it consisted of a 2-inch base rock layer, a 2-inch layer of sand, a 5 millimeter thick HDPE liner, 2 inches of sand, and then 2 inches of drain rock, I think. I forget what the final surface treatment was. They asked what my ground pressure was, because they couldn't exert more than, I want to say it was more than 7 PSI on the liner under any circumstances, whether it was after the sand, on the liner directly, or after the final treatment. So we calculated it out with a fully loaded groundhog and track T650, and I think we came out at 6.7 pounds per square foot, and that was even with the point loads on the 2 tires. So yeah, it's super low. There was nothing else. They were going to crane buckets of sand in and have guys rake it by hand. We didn't end up doing the project because they ended up not. I wasn't willing to join the union, so that was put the kibosh to that. But I do believe that they have acquired some of the Bobcat stuff, and they've kind of acquired some of the low pressure, smaller grading equipment. I don't know if they've acquired the Ashland yet. Hopefully not, because I don't want too much competition. Huge. I can spin around within the length of the machine. I can change direction almost instantaneous. Whereas a larger machine, sometimes on tight quarters, they're doing 6-8 point turns. I can spin right around within its own footprint. I can change directions. It's so maneuverable that that makes up for a lot of its production in the day. You can spin the direction, you can move material, some material go in one direction, spin around, and you can be having it go in the other direction, so you can be running loaded in both directions effectively. Whereas other equipment that would either not be able to turn around and have to back up and start over on small projects, like on levees, on bike paths, I can spin around and not disturb anything outside the bike path or levee for that matter. Whereas larger equipment, you'll have to go from one end all the way to the other to turn around to come all the way back. Yes, absolutely. Not only can you turn around and get lined up, you can back right into tight corners. It almost eliminates the inability to get into an inside corner. I can push right into a corner, I can turn 90 degrees and back up and pick up the little windrow and keep going. The other opportunity that it affords is stockpiling. You can't, when you have a loader exporting or something digging out of one side of the pile, you can't, with a conventional scraper, come up and dump on the top of the pile. With the Ashland scraper, you can come up and run the wheels up almost a vertical side of a hill, lift the arms of the loader up, and you can dump right there and then back right back off of it. So you can stockpile almost vertical, whereas with a conventional scraper, you can't do that. So now I can run around and pick up anything I need to, an inch off the whole job site, and then bring it over and stockpile it into a loader stockpile that can be loaded out later on or at any other point for that matter. So yeah, not only is it maneuverable into inside corners and tight places, and you can spin around and be lined up on the cut again, but now I can stockpile like no other scrapers can as well. It was a 2-acre job site. From cut to pile was about 700-800 feet, and we had a 613 and we had 3 Ashland scrapers, and we were almost doing 2-to-1. Each Ashland scraper was almost running 2 trips per 1 trip of the 613. So if you run the math, there's excuse me, 3 machines, 2-to-1. You're moving 5 yards per Ashland scraper, and the 613 I think is 8.5 yards or 9 yards. So 5 yards per Ashland scraper. You're moving a total of 15 yards with Bobcats and scraper and Ashlands, as compared to a Cat 613 moving 8.5-9 yards. So yeah, it's 15 minus 9, 6 yards difference each pass. And in a 700-foot run, I think we were doing a pass every 1.5 or 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes. So when you run the cycle times in a 10-hour day, 6 yards every, say, 5 minutes is 12 times 6 every hour. So you're 75 yards an hour faster in a 10-hour day. That adds up 700 yards more. Everybody drives a 1-ton to work. All you gotta do is put a car trailer behind it, and you can take your scraper and your Bobcat with you. I mean, there's zero mob costs. You have to drive a pickup to work because you have to have a fuel tank for other equipment, and it's as simple as a 10,000-pound trailer behind you, and it takes 15 minutes to load it up. There's no pilot cars, there's no permits, there's no overweight fees, there's no oversized signs. I can be on and off a job in a day. I can be in a residential neighborhood. I can park where normal cars park. Tight access, like a remodel in an old park, like an old city park. I can pull right in and take up 3 car parks, or 3 car parking spaces, unload my scraper, go to work, load it back up at the end of the day, and I'm gone, and nobody knows I was ever even there. Doesn't cost anything for mob fees. Yeah, and then in the day I can be as productive as larger Cat scrapers. At first they kind of laughed, they chuckled a little bit, but then they could see they've pulled up and watched for a couple hours at some point, and they've seen 2,000 and 3,000 yard days that we've moved, and just kind of, you get this little surprised look like, wow, they really move a lot of material. And it's one thing to say 2,000 or 3,000 yards, but when you have that piled up, and you drive by, and this morning I could look across the field and I could see houses and cars parked and everything, and then when you come back and you can't see 4 or 5 houses because you built a pile bigger than 4 houses put together, 12 feet high by 24 feet wide and 150 feet long in one day with 3 machines, they go, wow, that's pretty impressive. We've had other jobs that I wish that I would have just brought it out and done it, but they had a job where they were pushing material up the side of a levee on the inside of a pond because the ground was so soft. They could only get a low ground pressure D6 dozer in there. So they spent all day long moving this, I don't know how many yards it was. If I had to guess, I'd say probably 300 or 400 yards. They spent all day long with this dozer pushing it up and over and down the backside of this levee because it was the only thing that was light enough to get in there and not wreck the rest of the grade. And it took them all day to move that yardage up and out. And I thought, wow, if I could just bring a scraper over here, I could pick it up and run it up out of the levee and be done in, probably half the time or less with one Bobcat versus a D6. Generally in low gear in the skid steer, but wide open. I don't know the miles per hour. I think low speed is 3.5 or 4 miles an hour maybe. Almost never do we load in 2-speed, but quite often we're traveling in 2-speed. I would say more often than not we're traveling in 2-speed. Even fully loaded, it can be heaped, falling off all sides, and it motors it right along. Handles it well. It's got a really good balance between the front wheels and the machine itself. It adds enough weight to the machine that you improve your tractive effort, but it's not too much weight to the front of the machine that feels like you're always falling forward and wanting to tip forward. Well, when we first got the machine without the blade, it felt lighter and it felt more nimble, so we thought, okay, this can be a cutting machine. But we quickly learned that the little bit of extra weight for the blade was well worth it. It was, when you're starting to dump, you can grade so smooth and accurate. You don't even really need a grader in most cases. You can grade that smooth. As long as you've got a decent grade setter there to keep an eye on exactly where you're at, you can carry a finished grade for long ways. Yeah, it's still a fast learning curve. It's pretty intuitive. It's simple. It's a single button operation, with the exception of the grading blade. Then it's a single foot operation in the control configuration that I run. Otherwise, it would be a single joystick and a single button. Yeah, it's probably one of the easier attachments to run, especially as productive as it is. Normally you'll get an attachment that's easy to run, but it's not real super productive. Or you'll get an attachment that's not easy at all to run, but it's real productive once you figure it out. This one's kind of, it's a great mix of super simple and super productive.
And here he is.
One of the projects that we have coming up is 8.75, or it's right at 9 acre site. It's supposed to be a balanced site. I haven't confirmed that myself, but all the landscaping is in around it. All of the infrastructure is in around it. It borders a lake with a non-structural retaining wall that we have sidewalks that go right down to the lake. So overall impact is huge. We can, like I say, it's a 9 acre site. I think it's about 8, 9, maybe 1,100 feet long. By the widest point, probably 400 or 500 feet. And we're going to do that with just the groundhog attachment. We're not going to even bring in a 613 into that unit. I would say that that's probably on the cusp of its super efficient use. But it also depends on the total yardage moved, because if you don't have very many yards to move, then the cost of bringing in a larger scraper, you'll have it there for one day, and then you have the cost of moving it off the job. You have this big bulky machine sitting around that can't be used for anything else. When you bring in a Bobcat and an Ashland scraper, you can, when you're done with the scraper, you can put a bucket on, you can put rippers on, an auger on for putting fences up. So the machine's going to stay there as well. So if it takes 2 days longer, your net impact is still to the good, because you don't have mob in, mob out fees. You have a machine that is also dual purpose, or 3 or 4 purpose, however many attachments you can put on it. So no, I think that expands its effective use to a lot larger project. For a long time worked for a bigger contractor just as an operator, and I can think of probably 10 projects that they had this machine been on the job, their profitability would have gone way up. Small projects that they either had a skid steer with a bucket or a 613 cat scraper. There was no middle ground there. You either spend all day long making trips back and forth with the Bobcat because it's tight enough that the cat scraper can't get in it, or you bring the cat scraper in and you use it for half a day and you've made a huge mess, you've moved all your yardage everywhere, and you've broke everything in sight. And the company I worked for probably had a 613 for 2 years on rent, because they'd go from one job to the next job to the next job, and it was too expensive to call it off rent to get rid of it for 2 weeks and then to call it back on the rent for another job. Whereas they had 3 or 4 skid steers on the job all the time, it would have been easy to just park the one attachment, grab another one, do what else they had to do. And by the end of the day, it would have moved as much. The quantities weren't large enough that the Ashland groundhog couldn't have done it inside of 2 days. So we had a big machine just sitting there doing nothing for long periods of time, because it was only good for the one purpose. Generally speaking, it's a high speed, smooth movement, minimal impact to the machine. I mean, a bucket, you're jamming into a pile, you're changing direction, you're shaking the bucket to try to dump it into whatever truck or pile or whatever you're doing. With this, it's just a fluid motion it's just a smooth, repetitive motion. It's basically a small dozer. I can push as accurately, as quickly as a dozer, but I can carry a 2-yard reserve with me. So now when you go to the end of the fill, say you're building a fill, now I can carry a couple yards with me and I can just continue to fill. Whereas with a dozer, if I have to push it across my pad, you're spilling material, you're losing material unless you start doing a slot pushing. With the groundhog, you pick it up, you move it across, you don't disturb your finished pad grade, you dump it on the edge. It's unless you're only pushing it 15 feet, I think the groundhog would outproduce a dozer. You can go right over the top of a sidewalk and never worry about cracking it, never worry about, I roll right on and off. 1.5, 2 week old concrete, I don't have to worry about rolling the edges of the concrete. It's such a low ground pressure, it doesn't spall, it doesn't scratch, it doesn't, there's almost zero impact to the sidewalk at all. Sidewalks, curbs, gutters, mobans, any kind of small concrete stuff, it goes over it like nothing. Mm-hmm. Biggest advantage to our stuff is after long extended rain periods where it's really starting to soak in, we can still get across the top of stuff, whereas when you get a 657 or any kind of larger scraper, they'll sink to the bottom. If it's just a surface inch or two, it's not that big a deal. Where it really makes a difference is when it's deep into it, you can still float across the top. I have decomposed granite around my house that some of it is not so decomposed, and I was really concerned because I have a Bobcat E50 excavator that wouldn't dig through it, but when I shave it with the groundhog, it actually cut through it. I don't know if I have any photos of it, but I have a retaining wall behind my shop that I'm putting in. And I started digging into the hillside, and the excavator found granite that I couldn't dig through. So I filled all back around it, and I started scraping the top off with the groundhog. And with a new edge, it cut through the top of it, and I can show you pictures where the rock is clearly defined in the excavation, where it's solid rock and where it's decomposed, and it cut through it. I couldn't believe it. It was shocking to say the least. Yes,
Like
right.
sitting in a recliner looking at your shoelace.
Yes, you can see every aspect of everything. You can operate within. When I was working at the school project, we operated typically within an inch of the sides of the buildings, and you can see every bit of all of the side. The grading apron on the two sides goes all the way out almost to the full width of the frame. So when you come back, there's no great big windrow for somebody to rake or clean up, and it's so close and so accurate that it's a single guy with a rake can just run right down it, hit it with a vibra plate, and it's prepped for concrete or prepped for any other surface treatment that you're going to do. When you get a new operator, they can make a little bit of chop, but generally speaking, yes, you can take a job site that has got a lot of choppy, wavy motions to it, and because of the balance between the machine and the front casters, it almost self-levels. You can just set it. You can almost set it and forget it, and it takes all of the highs and lows, and within 2 passes or 3 passes, they're generally gone. It's almost self-leveling. Total scope of the job is 5,000 acres currently. There is 17,000 homes going in. My primary role is, at least at this point, is regrading of the lots after the infrastructure is in. So the mass grading comes in, they're moving millions of yards of material. Then infrastructure comes in, sewer, water, electric, all the communication utilities, any and all utilities to do with a home. And then when they're gone, they just kind of roughly throw it back to look like, yep, this is a street, yep, that's pads, this is curb and gutter area. None of it is ever checked as far as accuracy goes. So then I'm put on the task of reshaping, accurately placing all of the curb and gutter lines, the house pads. Now we're getting more and more into the street sections. We're doing subgrade and all that stuff as well. But generally speaking, a developer will come in and they'll take down 30 to 100 lots, and they'll want them certified. So we'll come back and we'll reprocess, regrade, recompact. And in some cases, generally the lots are about 5,000 square feet, 50 by 100. Some are 60 and 70. Generally they're 50. Some of the lots are off by a foot. So we'll have to bring in material, and I mean a foot. Some of them are a foot low, some of them are a foot high. So in some cases I'll have to move 300 or 400 yards from one lot and move it over to another lot. It takes an hour or 2 hours with 2 of these machines to flop the lot, and then my grader comes by, trims it off to it's actually laser controlled grader, trims it off to its certifiable accuracy, and then on to the next lot we go. Some 100 lot developments or some subdivisions, it'll take us generally speaking, with 2 scrapers and a grader, we can do about 15 to 18 lots in a day. So 100,000 square feet, they're 5,000 square feet a piece, times 12, 15 would be 75,000. When they originally started, there was some dispute between the utility companies having to regrade the lots, and they argued that through, and basically because I have the equipment and as efficient as we can regrade them, I think our net cost is down around $250 or $300 per lot to regrade it. That includes mob fee for the day, labor for the day, parts and labor, or parts and wear and tear on the machines, the attachments, everything involved, our total cost is around $250 or $300 a lot. They basically said because of the cost is so cheap, we're just going to regrade them all and we're going to take it out of all of the utility companies' contracts. Therefore, they don't have to bid sending somebody back in and regrading all the lots. And it's because of the Ashland scraper that we can move material so fast and efficient that now they've just decided it's so cheap and easy to just regrade them all and not worry about it. They had some of the utility companies come back and say, okay, it's going to be $1,000 a lot or $1,500 a lot to regrade these. Then it was a real argument because now you're talking $2 million, $3 million that it's going to be out the window. When we come back to them and we say, hey, we think we can do these for, $250 or $300 a piece, now it's as at a cost point that it's a no-brainer. Here, let's have these guys regrade them. It's fast, it's easy, it's $300. It's a guy's wages for the day with burden and so on. And it's because we can do 15 to 18 of them in a day with 3 machines, two scrapers and a grader. Sometimes it depends on how far off they are, but sometimes we run 1 scraper and 1 grader and we can still get 15 and 18 lots in a day. So yeah, it's made the difference in my work volume from me having to kind of look for work to them going, hey, you're doing it so fast and cheap, just do them all. We don't even want to think about it again. I think we were probably 500 or 600 lots in when they decided that. I think we're at maybe 2,000 lots now. That was when I went from 1 machine to 2 machines just for lots. And then I acquired another machine, I went from 1 machine to 3 machines. 2 machines were designated just to lots and 1 machine for miscellaneous other pickup stuff and in case of overloaded work times. But no, basically they'll give us, here's 100 lots, this subdivision, here's completion date, here's when escrow has to close, here's when they have to be done. Sometimes we have plenty of time, sometimes we need to work a little overtime and really kind of knock them out. Generally speaking, we have enough time that we can go in and we'll spend 2 days and then we'll go do other projects and we'll come back and we'll do 2 more days and it's to mow in and out, it doesn't cost anything. It's so easy, and so we drive it up on a gooseneck trailer behind a pickup and we go from job to job and we can be 3 machines moved in less than an hour. The fastest return on money out of all the attachments, including the laser controlled grader from Bobcat. Some attachments you have to have to finish a job, and therefore you don't necessarily look at how quick your money comes back. Other attachments, you buy them because your money comes back so fast. This is one of those that I would buy over and over because I know that I don't have to worry about the money. It's going to come back fast. I don't have to worry about 6 months, 8 months down the road getting my money back. It's generally speaking, within 2 jobs, it's paid for itself. You don't even factor in a mobilization fee because it's so easy. It just, I don't even worry about it. It's like when diesel fuel was 85 and 90 cents a gallon. You didn't factor in fuel cost to a job. Now it's $3 a gallon, now you do. Well, when you have to move a big cat scraper around, you figure in mobilization. I don't even add it in there. It's not even a concern. In and out, because I have to have my pickup there. I have to have a trailer there with a skid steer anyway. It fits on the same trailer. It's that, and its effectiveness up to, I would say, a fairly large job for compact equipment. I would say you even eat into what larger contractors would consider small jobs that are not real big money makers for them. They still make money, but you're taking a lot of those jobs from the bigger guys as well. It's so nice because where you're sitting, the level in your butt tells you what it's cutting. Whereas in a big scraper, the cab can be all cattywampus and it can be totally different angle, or your cab can be level and your scraper can be scraping something at a totally different angle. In this, where you sit, what you feel as level or slope or whatever is what the machine is doing. So yeah, it's different from the big machines, but it's good. It's you don't have to think or look back to see what angle or degree it's cutting. You can close your eyes and you know what angle it's cutting.